No, I don't need to hold potentially inappropriate messages for review. Oh, am I going live already? Hold on. I was not supposed to go ready just yet. Hold on. I gotta promote it. Okay, well, no, I don't want to pop out the chat. What do I share? There she is. They moved it. It's in a new place now. All right. Okay. Channel updates. Yeah, I'll put in channel updates. At everyone. Live streaming now. Come and join me. That doesn't pull up anything. All right. That's not supposed to be happening. That's the right link, I think. Not sure. Okay. All right. And then let's open up Facebook real quick. I didn't think it would start it immediately like it did, but all right. Oh, that's right. What are you talking about? What do you mean that doesn't work? Yeah, there we go. Okay. Damn it, Facebook. All right, all right. Oh, there we go. This one's fetching a preview of nothing, apparently. All right, then. It says there's nobody here, nobody waiting or anything. Okay. I feel bad. I should have... what happens if I click the link? Yeah, okay, it pulls up. That's good. I just need to test it. So, I guess to start this, wait, hold on. What is with these dots? What is that? What are these dots at the bottom? What is that? Is that my connection? Is that my loudness? I don't know. I've never actually live streamed through YouTube's thing before. So I don't know if I'm quiet or if I need to change something. No idea. No idea. I'm not even using voice meter like I normally do. That's what I prefer to use because it just kind of puts a natural filter. All right. All right. There we go. Enough looking at Facebook. Let's see if anybody's actually joined before I start anything. And you know what? I shouldn't expect anybody to really join because this is my first video on the new channel. So hi guys, I'm the Judge Someone. You may also know me as the Jaw Someone. I started this channel as sort of another side, to show another side of my personality. Yes, I know this room is messy and I need to clean it. I can see those cords over there. That's fine. But yeah, I started this channel because I wanted to be able to express my political and religious views and just find a meaningful conversation, find a meaningful way to express and discover my own views. And that's kind of the purpose here of this channel. And Wow, it's funny. Last night I was just thinking about starting this very live stream, and like I was going through so many topics in my head, but now that I'm actually sitting down because I don't have anything written down like I should have, I now have nothing to say. Of course, that's how it works. I guess something that I want to talk about to start out with is the problem of YouTube and how it treats all of us on this platform. Not it's not right. It's not just. It feels so weird talking to a live stream that nobody's joined, by the way. um, but yeah, I'm gonna be here for about an hour, maybe an hour and a half, something like that. I guess I'll talk about what got me started here and what got me going. So I was raised in a very Christian background. Church of Christ was the one that I always went to. That was, it was just what my parents went to, and so that's what I went to. And I guess you could say I was indoctrinated in a sense into Christianity, which I'll save that subject for another day. But that's what most people would, I imagine, agree with, is that it is technically indoctrination for your parents to take you into church and teach you Christianity. Whether it's morally right or wrong is another discussion. Why is there such a huge shadow over me? That's this thing. Doggone it. You stupid thing. In my way. Blocking the sunlight. Maybe I should move this over to this side. Do all my videos with this over here from now on. Just a thought. I tried to do that before though, and it didn't really. Anyways. And growing up, I never really thought too much about it. I never really did a lot of investigating or a lot of, because I never really had much of a passion for it. All of my devotion was to video games and then God second, basically. So I was breaking one of them 10 commandment laws right there. Thou shalt not have other gods before me, or thou shalt not worship other idols. Yeah, well, video games were my idols because I told myself, of course, that I worshiped God first and foremost because that's what I was raised. That's what I was told. That's what that text means and why I should believe that and follow that. So of course I tried to. But yeah, it's the difference between claiming and being. So as I got older, I found myself just in a state of discontentment with myself because I believed in something, but then didn't actually know anything about it and didn't really have any real solid arguments or ground. And so whenever, it's like what they call in politics. Basically, I was dealing with I think it's tribalism or identity politics, I think is what it's called, where it's just like you link yourself so strongly with your beliefs that whenever those beliefs get challenged, you get very emotional. And that was me for much of my life. Every time I dealt with an atheist, I had no arguments. I couldn't handle it. Couldn't handle their dissenting opinion. And so gradually I had to, over time, increase my tolerance and learn that these people deserve to be heard and deserve to have their voices spoken, which leads me to another stance I'll talk about later, which is freedom of speech. I am a freedom of speech extremist. I think that you should be allowed to say pretty much whatever you want, aside from, pretty much American law, just everywhere, where it's like you can say whatever you want as long as you're not inciting people to violence or to panic or anything that's proven to be detrimental. Like don't walk into an airport and scream bomb. I find that very interesting, by the way, when talking about freedom of speech, because people say freedom of speech doesn't mean freedom from consequences. It's such an interesting thing to say, because it's like, wait, the whole point of America's freedom of speech law is so that you don't You get thrown in prison over something that you might say, and yet we're being thrown in today's modern political climate. We're being thrown into a sort of mental prison, a societal prison for having opinions and expressing opinions in certain words that people don't like. People are very quick to be judgy and label you these days. And I know that there's a lot of people on YouTube who say that a lot, but I have personal examples of people doing this to me. Just because I'm Christian, as if I'm not the only one who dealt with identity politics and tribalism. Namely, many of these people were also atheists and part of also people from the LGBT community. Surprisingly, because I've known several people who tell me that they're gay or bisexual, and I've never had any problems with them. I just simply disagree with the practice. That's it. I don't have any like hatred or anything like that towards them. But this one girl that I worked with, and this was about a year ago, man, she just couldn't handle that I didn't agree with that choice. I didn't think, my position is, I think legally, you should be allowed to be gay and bi and trans and queer, whatever. I don't really care, because it's not, I can't control you, and I don't want to. I'd rather convince you that something is wrong than tell you and force you by law not to do it. Of course, it's obvious why certain things should be made into law, like violence. Of course, it's better to convince you why violence is bad and you shouldn't be violent than it is to just simply force you, because people are very people don't tend to like that very much when you try to force them to do things that they don't want to do. But yeah, this one girl, she's one of those like kinds of people who thinks that, I swear, she seems like one of the kinds of people who changed the definition of homophobe. I'm sure you've heard that term hundreds of times before, and it originally meant people with a prejudice against the LGBT community. That's what that meant. That's what it's always meant, as far as I'm concerned. But about a couple of months ago, all of a sudden I'm hearing of this new definition, this change to what it means. And apparently now it means not just simply dislike, not just simply being prejudiced against it, but even just disliking it, even if it's because of your religious views or your political views or whatever. You're not allowed to dislike it. You're not allowed to disagree. If you do, you're considered a homophobe now. Not sure who changed this definition or when, and I don't think it's true at all. And I don't think that the people claiming that represent the entire community, because again, most of the LGBT people that I've met are pretty cool people. Yeah, it's just weird. She tried to have me fired 3 times for that. She reported me 3 times before quitting. And after, it was kind of funny because they weren't quick enough to submit those reports, I guess. Like their team wasn't quick enough to act on that. So she just got impatient and just basically rage quit. She didn't even give a 2 weeks notice. She just flat out quit. So that was funny. So she quit because I mean, she may have had other reasons, but she didn't tell anybody. I seriously asked other people, like, what happened? Why did she quit? And she didn't tell anybody. So that leads me with only one real explanation as to why, and that's because I offended her that much by just simply saying I disagree. It's funny because she even asked me about it too. I was just at work, pretty much just minding my own business. Maybe I said something to somebody else, and then somebody said something to her about my political stance. I'm not sure when this happened exactly, but she came up to me and she was like, what's your opinion on the LGBT? Something along those lines. It wasn't her exact phrasing, but, and I looked at her and I responded. I said, I said, well, I think they should be allowed to choose to live that way, but I don't agree with it. I think that it's unhealthy. And she didn't even want to hear me. Like I tried to get my opinion, and as soon as I said I disagree, she just like, I'm done. I'm done. I'm not hearing you. I'm not listening to your bigotry. So she wandered off and then reported me 3 times. And I know she reported me 3 times because every time she reported me, which is funny because each one that came through was about a week apart from each other. And every time that happened, the RGM of the store would pull me aside that day that she was, handed it, and she would say, "Look, you really, this person reported you. You're not in trouble, but this person reported you. But somebody reported you. They didn't even tell me who it was," which really frustrated me because, I've made my stance clear. I want to talk about things. I don't want to force anything on anybody. I just want to talk about it. And she didn't like that. So she reported me 3 times. And then I sat down and I got very annoyed that day. And I started asking my coworkers, like, hey, did I ever offend you? Did I ever say anything to offend you? Because the thing was, those reports didn't actually tell me what it was that I did that was wrong either. It was just somebody reported you for harassment. That's what the reports were. They were for harassment. Yeah, I'm harassing you by having a different opinion on something. Oh, man. What's hilarious is that I was living in Texas at the time, okay? And Texas has always been, like, one of the most prideful states in America for, like, being the most, free speech, Second Amendment, extremists, I guess. I don't know any better way to put it. They're being the strongest advocates. But that doesn't really seem to be the case anymore. Now it seems to me that it's more becoming the opposite, or at least it was where I was living specifically, which was on the northern end of Austin. I guess they keep Austin weird for a reason, right? I never actually found out where that phrase came from. But there you go. And nobody's joined the stream. That's sad. You guys break my heart. Crush me into pieces. I'm just kidding. You guys are cool. It's fine. Okay. Suddenly, that light, I guess, finally decided to start working properly. It's now way brighter in here, so that's cool. That's nice. I kind of wanted to talk about my background too. I got off track. So like I said, I grew up with a very Christian background, and my family, I would say, I'm not sure, actually. I'm not sure. I'd say my family is center in the political spectrum, because there are definitely members of my family who are very left-leaning, and then there's members of my family who are very right-leaning. So, of course, there's a lot of... It's strange to me that we're actually able to be cohesive as a family unit, just in general, despite that. And it's not really because of politics. I'd say it's more because of personality. Like, you know how characters on the left and on the right and in the center have their own, I'd say, distinct stereotypical personality types. And my family definitely has all of those. Like, it just depends on who you talk to. So, like, for example, one member of my family is a misandrist who doesn't like men. So she's very left-leaning. She behaves like those screechy protesters that you see in those videos on YouTube, like the types that get owned all the time by Ben Shapiro. I don't mean this to like trigger anybody or turn anybody away. That's just what happens. It's what I see happening. Except for that one instance on BBC. Dude, I lost so much respect for Ben Shapiro. When I first found out about him, I genuinely liked the guy, but that's just because I was getting my feet into politics for like the first time. Well, maybe not really for the first time, but like genuinely caring about hearing what the arguments are and getting interested in it. Because up until that point, about 2 years ago, I just didn't care. I didn't really want to hear about it, didn't really want to talk about it. All I cared about was video games. That was it. That was my life goal, in fact, for the longest time. I wanted to create video games because I have ideas. That's all I've got so far. Is I just have ideas. I have these. I can give you guys an example. I want to make a racing game that's centered around insects, and so the tracks or the courses, uh, they have just different ways of traveling. So some ways by flight, some ways by ground, some ways by like platforming. And you get to choose your different types of insects. It's like you could be spiders and you could like jump around, or you could be ants and you could like curl up into balls and stuff like that to cross certain areas. Or you could be bees. Different insects would have like kind of different goals to accomplish on the track too, that like sort of help the team get ahead overall. It's like the bees, for example, would be able to sting, and then there would be like spiders that can spin webs to lay traps, and then of course ants can like work together, so they're much more immune to the spider's webs and to the bees' stings. So they're pretty much immune, but they're also slower. So and then you'd have other insects. That's an idea that I've had for a game, but I have no idea how to actually do that. I could probably, if I took the time just to learn coding, and I know enough about art to make like 8-bit art design, even though it would look terrible. I would know. I've tried to make some 8-bit art design. It looks disgusting in my opinion. But that's just me, because they say that everybody who gets into doing art tends to hate their own work, and have that case of like, how book writers in the movies, they're always like tearing apart sheets and sheets of the paper just being shown, just wrinkling up, and there's just a pile of it on the floor. Yeah, that's me. Somebody's getting their sorry ass arrested. Nice. Good. It's justice for the wicked. That's assuming a lot of things, but and then my religious stance is also not entirely one thing. I told you guys at very early on in the stream that I come from a Church of Christ background. But that's not entirely cut and dry. I do agree with most of the arguments that the Church of Christ makes about the Bible compared to others. It's like for example, I really disagree with the notion that once saved, always saved with baptism. I really don't like that mentality. I don't think it's a healthy way to look at things or to think about things. It is true that it's still under that religion, under that particular sect of Christianity, you're still praising God as the number one. So, and it does make it clear that there's other reasons besides baptism to become Christian. It's the community, it's the doctrines that are taught. So I can kind of understand why so many people resonate with baptism, because it makes people feel more, I guess, included. Like it makes people feel like there's more hope. Whereas with the Church of Christ, it's much more specific, and it's much more harsh. It's very, very, very harsh. Because we don't subscribe to the notion of once saved, always saved. It's, if you're baptized, you have to actually live like you give a darn. You have to actually try to follow the word. You have to actually try. And for most of my life, I really haven't been. I never really voiced my opinions, never really talked about it. Because in my eyes, I was given a mission already from God, which was to design video games. That's been my perspective, but it's changed. It's changed, especially. I'll talk about what brought about this major change in me to caring so much about religion and politics as opposed to before. And I have multiple reasons for that. Multiple. I think the first one, and this is what really sowed the seed and got me to care, was and I'm not going to mention who it is, but I told you guys already about how there was this one individual in my family who was a misandrist and who hates men and has a lot of insecurities and acts like your stereotypical protester, the kind that you see all the time getting absolutely destroyed in debates. And she lived with me for much of my life, very much of my life. I'm not sure what is a specific amount of time there is that I can give you. I'd say it's probably, I'd estimate probably around 7 years of my life. I'm 21 years old, so that's about a third of my life I've spent living with her. And a person can do a lot of damage in that amount of time. Sure, there's a lot that you can do towards bonding, but that's not really what happened between us. Because of her issues, I pretty much had to be a perfect person in her subjective view. Otherwise, I wasn't good enough. And the problem was that those views changed depending on the day. Some days, oh, I was just a kid and I didn't have to worry, and she's just a sweet person who cares and is loving. And on other days, I wasn't doing enough. I needed to be doing more chores. I needed to be doing everything. I needed to be taking care of all the pets. I had to be this perfect shining light. Otherwise, I am the spawn of Satan himself. So I developed a very strong hatred towards authoritarianism, because that's what she was. She was an authoritarian, and she would manipulate me all the time. I told you already about how subjective she is and how she changes her behavior based on how she feels. And I really, really grew a strong hatred for people who do that. I shouldn't say people who do that, but for that kind of behavior. And that I think that is what sowed the seed and got me started. I first started living with her when I was about somewhere between 8 and 9 years old. And this was because my father left the picture of the family. I'm not going to go into any details because there are other people in the family besides myself who really don't want to have that kind of info just disclosed to the general public. If you are watching this and you know me and you know who I am, then you know why this matters so much. Which I wish I could tell you more, but I don't think it's wise. I don't think it's wise considering my family and my family ties and connections and everything like that. I don't want to just cause disruption and damage when it's not needed. So the second thing would be that I'm very much inclined towards pessimism and bitterness. So I guess really what I'm trying to say here is genetics, because again, part of the family line, and this mostly, well, no, not mostly, it comes from both my parents' side of the family. We have a very strong tie between being judgmental, and also towards being a very, very pessimistic. And there are people in my family. I already mentioned one who is an abusive misandrist. Well, there are also ones who are like drunkards and just not the best people. Not the best people. Literally nobody in my entire family line for like the past, I don't know, maybe the past 100 years has really ever gotten famous except for like one. And she just got famous because she wrote some book in England, I think. I never even read it. I tried to read it, but I found it to be boring, so I didn't even finish reading it. I didn't even get past like chapter 5. I couldn't handle very much of that book. But yeah, because of all that, uh, I just am a very emotional guy when it comes to controversial subjects. I care about these things more than I should have for what I knew. And I knew that I cared more than I should have for how little I knew. I knew how little I knew. I knew that I didn't understand anything about these subjects. Though I had to learn that I didn't know that I because of my natural state, I wound up debating a lot of people and getting destroyed by atheists particularly because I had a much stronger stance on religion than I did on politics, and this especially became evident in high school. There were friends of mine that were atheists, and so we they like to troll me because it's funny, and it is funny. It is funny to troll guys who are ignorant and stupid and don't know anything about the subject. So I kind of developed a lot of self-hatred too because of that. Because I just knew that I wasn't a very knowledgeable person who deserved to be respected in these areas because I didn't really know anything. And I really hated that. So that's another seed that was sown. I guess you could say that was point three, kind of, sort of. And what really got me rolling was, I'm not sure, actually. I'm not sure if it happened during high school around 2015 or if it happened 2 years ago, because 2 years ago was when I actually started observing politicians and observing what people have to say and listening and learning what I can. So I'd say 2015 was probably just a fourth kind of sowing the seed, and it was about the 2016 election. Everybody was talking about that, even back in 2014 and 2015. People were talking about that like crazy at my high school, and so of course I jumped in that and I voiced my own opinion. And what's hilarious is that my prediction was right, because people were like obsessed with with who is now our current president. People were obsessed with Trump because he said a bunch of things that were very offensive, and people didn't really like that. And people said, "Oh, he sounds like an idiot who doesn't actually know anything about politics. He sounds like he's stupid. He sounds like he's just saying what he's saying just to be edgy or whatever." And I said, I think he's doing this on purpose. I think he's trying to pretend that he's dumb to make people, just to kind of trigger people and kind of, I guess, expose. It's funny. I didn't even think about it that deeply, but really what I was saying back then was he was doing it to expose people who were prejudiced towards right-wingers, because he himself registered as a right-winger. So yeah, that happened. It's interesting. But another thing that I suggested was that he's actually very intelligent. And it turns out, after all this time, I was right. He won the election. And it's crazy to me. It's crazy to me. That's how things turned out. But that's what I betted on, especially after looking at the behavior of Hillary Clinton and the controversies that she got involved with. In my eyes, she was way worse. I didn't vote, though. Actually didn't vote in 2016. I was old enough to. I would have been 19, so 2 years ago. Well, actually, almost 3 years ago now, but 2.5, we'll say. 2.5 years ago. And I didn't vote for him because I just wasn't sure that I trusted his I trusted that he would be a good president to this country. I didn't want to have my name remembered and as somebody who supported him, and then have it turn out that he's exactly what so many people, especially people on the left wing, were saying about him, that he's just this evil person and he's, gonna basically be Hitler and all that, which is just ridiculous. I think it's a major, what's the word? I think it weakens the impact that the Nazis actually had by calling somebody like Trump Hitler. Same goes for right-wingers. Now, I guess time's gone on. For some reason, the left wing has decided that they're going to label everybody on the right as Nazis. I just don't understand the logic behind that. I mean, I really don't. Like, it's been talked about, and it's kind of generally understood why people do that. And it's that basically so that they don't have to contend with your points. If they can just label you as some terrible, evil thing, then, you don't have to, your opinion is not worth being listened to. Your voice is not worth being heard because you're this label. I still don't understand why people do that. I really don't. It makes no sense to me. Though I suppose they're probably not even aware that that's what they're doing. Nobody's really showed up to this live stream at all, huh? I shared it on my Discord and on my Facebook. By the way, I finally have it back. In case somebody does show up later on, I'm going to go ahead and copy my Discord link. It's just server settings, invites. There we go. This invite code was only used once. Wow. Well, guys, I see how it is. All right. So it's capital T, D, lowercase v, Q, number 2, capital P, lowercase c. And I'm just going to type it here in chat as well. There we go. Because for some reason, I can't just share the link. For some reason, it doesn't let me do that. I can't click on it, and there's no option for me to share it. I really don't understand why it's doing that. I really don't. Oh, well. Oh, well. That's what you want to do if you want to get in my Discord. Actually, yeah, no. Never mind. And got me to this point, this position. Hold on, I'm going to try this again. I'm going to try sharing this to my Facebook once again. Because it seemed like it was pulling up before, but it didn't actually pull up like an image the last time I opened this up, last time I shared the link. Might be Facebook suppressing me because I haven't interacted with Facebook for a while. Because I really don't like Facebook in general. That's another subject on its own. Yeah, okay, this sharing the link here doesn't change anything. All right. Okay. Coolio. Who cares? Whatever. People will see this as a video on the channel, so that'll be interesting. This is really hard to talk about. It really is, because I just have to pull up so many memories, good and bad, and really think this stuff through. So different than how it was in my head. So different. It's so different to actually talk about it than it is to just be thinking about it. I guess that's why my grandma always advised me to write. Gamer. That's what we called her as kids, by the way. We called her Gamer. Or Gamer. even though she never really plays video games. Oh man, video games were such an amazing childhood bringer for me. I can barely begin to tell you guys all the stories of playing video games with my brothers and sisters. All those games of Mario Kart and Mario Party, and then when I got into a PC, the Flash era of games and Age of Empires, and then eventually Steam, and how I got in touch with so many of my friends that are now like with me on my Discord, and it's just craziness. It's just craziness how far things have gone. Kind of nice. But yeah, I'm not going to continue this live stream for much longer because of the time. But as far as my political perspective and religious perspective go, I'd say I'm almost entirely Church of Christ leaning. And this isn't just because of my background. This is because of the arguments that are made. Because while I do understand the Baptist perspective, I've already described why I really don't agree with that kind of logic. Even atheists mock it. The atheist community mock it all the time. They say, "Oh, all I have to do is pray and go, I'm so sorry, please forgive me," and then I'm immediately forgiven. It's like, no, it's not really that simple. It really isn't. Never has been. There's a saying that I've heard somewhere, and it's, the best way to apologize is to change your ways. It's like, yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking. That's exactly what the Church of Christ ministry preaches about the value of baptism. You have to live. You have to live like you care about this stuff, not like you're just doing it just because, and it's just another thing that goes on, that goes by, another day. No, it's not that at all. There's also music in the church. I also don't agree with that. And I have a reason that's not the same as the argument that members of the Church of Christ make, is that, well, the Bible doesn't tell you to use music in worship. It tells you to use your voice in worship. And I actually would disagree with that. Because just because the Bible doesn't say something doesn't mean that it advocates against it necessarily. Anyways, you have to look at the context of other things, which they kind of do by arguing that, hey, the Bible does specifically say to use your voice in worship at this particular, and I wish I was better about remembering scripture locations. I'm not that kind of guy who does that. No. Ask me to remember what 2 Kings chapter 11 verse 4 says. No, I don't know. I have no idea. What about Luke 4 chapter 2? Luke 4 verse 5? No, I don't know. I don't know what that says. But I can remember the arguments, because that's what really matters to me. And music in the church, my argument is much more of a secular and community-oriented argument. And it's simply that it's not very encouraging. It's more pleasant to the ears than it is. It doesn't bring people together quite as much as worship by voice does. When the church is singing together, it's very different from music. And I know this because I've been to Baptist churches before and been involved with worship that involves music. Yes, there are people who sing to it. That is true. But it's not the same. It seems to me like more people don't actually involve themselves in the worship. It seems to me that people just sort of just sort of sit back and don't really care. That's what my argument is for why it's bad to do that. And I know it's probably not the best argument. There's probably more things to say. There's probably some study out there that would really help or hurt my argument. And I mean, let the truth be known. You know, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But that's my opinion as far as that goes. And some other things too, like the Trinity, the gospel. I'm among the Christians that say that the God of the Old Testament is the same as the God of the New Testament. It's just that in the Old Testament, you see more of a particular part of the Trinity than you do in the New. So in the Old Testament, you see more of God the Father, and in the New Testament, you see more of God the Son. And how and why he's divided up this way specifically is very intriguing, and I'm not sure I can explain it. But it is what it seems to me that the Bible says that he is. So that's what I believe he is. Now, some of you might ask me if I believe in God. And by saying that I'm a Christian, it kind of automatically presumes that, doesn't it? But it really doesn't when you look at it this way. Maybe you've heard this phrase before, maybe you haven't, but I'll just go ahead and repeat it. To believe in God is to obey his word. That overall should explain my stances on this entirely. It's not about whether or not God exists. It's about the doctrine that's preached. And I do my best to live by and follow said doctrine so that I'm not led astray by sinfulness. It's very hard to do because we're very forgetful people. Even though it's ingrained in our very nature to know the difference between right and wrong, figuring out what the right thing to do at every single specific instance it's so difficult. It's so easy for somebody like me or your average psychologist or your average political speaker, whoever, to talk so, not high and mighty, but to advocate certain beliefs, but then to actually apply them is much more difficult. It's so much more difficult. It's just like what I said about being in your head versus actually talking. You know, all these ideas I had in my head about what to say for this live stream last night were completely different than what I've said so far. Different phrasing, even some additional points were forgotten, and I know that there were a couple of things I had to say that were actually really, really good points. And I thought to myself, man, I should write this down. Nah, and I didn't. But there you go. But then, and now as far as politics go, I'm very much right-wing, particularly conservative. I shouldn't have said very much right-wing. I'm more like center-leaning right, but I'm leaning. I'm leaning further to the right, further and further, as far as conservative goes. Just because of the topics that are talked about and the arguments that I hear, particularly from the left, seem to be really, really bad arguments. I mean, seriously, like, let's pick an easy one. Abortion. Do you know how many times it's been all the arguments in support of it are debunked and destroyed, and the only people who support it can't seem to argue for it very well? Like, really? Like, so the best arguments I've ever heard for pro-abortion is from a comedian called George Carlin, and he really wasn't making arguments. He was more like just kind of spouting nonsense and uh, spouting jokes. He was spouting jokes, which is crazy because people took him very, very seriously. If you go to George Carlin on abortion or George Carlin on pro-life, and then just go to the comments, it's just like, man, people actually take a comedian seriously on this? Like, these are actual arguments to these people? Because they're not. I'm not sure I know how to verbalize my position on why his jokes don't count as actual arguments. I suppose one thing he does is he plays identity politics, and another is that he makes a lot of based assumptions. That's all I can think of. That's all I can think of. Like, one of his jokes really shows like why I don't think his points really mattered. One of them was like oh, we don't want to kill you so that we can draft you into the military. It's just, it's so untrue, and yet people were like, yeah, it's so true, man. It's like, no, it's really not. It's really not. And then I think the crazy thing that people do is they try to claim that it's because pro-lifers want to control women. If these guys really thought this through, they'd realize that allowing abortions give men more power than it does women, because they don't have to risk. If they can manage to convince their lover to abort the child, then there's not going to be any risk of them having to pay child support whenever they leave and run away. It actually makes it easier for these guys to control women. It makes it easier for them to manipulate and abuse them, especially considering what abortion does to you psychologically. There are numerous videos that you can find here on YouTube talking about it, and about how people exchange their stories on how choosing to abort their child while it was still in the womb savagely destroyed their happiness. And it's very painful. Very painful to think about and to hear about some of these stories. Just do your own research on that. Seriously, it's really sad. Another thing about it is that it's like most of the people who do it is because it's convenient. It's more convenient to just get rid of it than to raise it up, go through the birthing process, which is very painful. And I understand that position of not wanting to go through that. But women have always had a choice when it comes to that, and it's abstinence. They didn't have to. Doesn't mean that life should be killed. That's another issue that I have with the left nowadays, and the people in supporting of those arguments. It's how quick they are to mischaracterize you. Like, most of the pro-life, they'll say you're wanting to control women. It's like they've never actually heard the argument from a pro-lifer. It's not about controlling women. It's about giving the child life. It's about the rights of the unborn child. Because they can't speak for themselves. They're entirely helpless. Entirely dependent on their parents Mostly the mother up until it's born. And even, well, I would say even after that, but I'm pretty sure, don't we have like supplementary milk that infants can drink? I'm pretty sure that we do. But yeah, it's very disheartening to talk about and to think about. But I'm going to go ahead and end this here. Nobody's joined the live stream. Nobody's asking any questions. I literally have 0 viewers and 0 likes. So I'm just going to go ahead and end the live stream here. For those of you guys who are watching this, appreciate that you're interested in hearing out what my position is. And yeah, there's going to be a lot more that I want to talk about here. I suppose before I go, I should probably let you know what this channel is actually, like what kind of videos I'm going to make. They're not going to be very frequent, but whenever I do make them, they'll mostly be podcast type videos like this one, just rants, or they will be, more, what's the word, like detailed and specialized, topical. They'll be more topical. Something like what you see with Kurzgesagt, or 1791, or, man, I think Kurzgesagt is already a pretty popular example, but he does science. Yeah, just something that's very professionally edited and put together using clips and using good-looking transitions and, narrating over it and putting up the camera for certain parts and just, yeah, 1791 is really my favorite example. I really like that channel. So if you guys want to look it up, I recommend it. It's a YouTube channel known as 1791. Political channel, talk about politics. It's interesting. So yeah, that's about all. That's about all I have to say and that I can think about for here. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.